Have you ever helped a stranger and days later felt like that moment changed everything? Maybe you've been watched, had dreams too real to be dreams, or sensed the person you helped wasn't entirely human. Today I'm telling you a story about what happens when kindness opens doors that should stay closed. Hit that like button and subscribe, because this is going to mess with your head. If you're feeling like there's something beyond what we see every day, you're in the right place. Every week, I bring stories that defy explanation. Subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss what's coming next. It started on a Tuesday evening in late September. One of those evenings when the sun sets earlier than you expect, and the air carries that first hint of autumn cold that makes you walk faster toward home. I was coming back from my shift at the electronics repair shop downtown, taking my usual route through Meridian Street, which cuts through the older part of the city where the buildings still have that 1920s architecture with detailed cornices and fire escapes that zigzag down like metal rivers frozen in time. The street was mostly empty, just a few other people hurrying home, their faces buried in their phones or hidden behind upturned collars against the wind that had started to pick up. I was maybe 3 blocks from the subway station when I saw her standing at the corner of Meridian and Fifth, right under the flickering streetlight that the city had been meaning to fix for months. She was wearing a long gray coat that looked expensive, the kind with those perfectly tailored lines that you see in magazine ads, and her hair was dark and pulled back in a way that seemed both elegant and severe. But what caught my attention immediately was the white cane she held in her right hand, tapping it methodically against the sidewalk in that distinctive rhythm that blind people use to navigate the world. She was standing completely still, her head tilted slightly as if she was listening to something I couldn't hear, and there was something about her posture, something in the way she held herself, that made her seem lost despite the confidence in her stance. I slowed down as I approached, that automatic human instinct kicking in, the one that makes you want to help when you see someone who might need it. "Excuse me," I said as I got closer. "Are you okay? Do you need help getting somewhere?" She turned her head toward my voice with a precision that seemed almost mechanical, too exact, too calculated for someone who supposedly couldn't see. Her face was beautiful in a way that was hard to describe, all sharp angles and smooth skin that looked almost porcelain in the orange glow of a streetlight. But it was her eyes that stopped me cold. They were covered by dark glasses, the kind that are completely opaque, but even through them I could sense something watching me, studying me, measuring me in a way that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "I am lost," she said, and her voice was like nothing I'd ever heard before, smooth and melodic, but with undertones that seemed to vibrate at frequencies my ears weren't quite designed to process. "I need to reach the observatory on Highland Avenue, but I cannot find my way. The buses have changed their routes, and I am unfamiliar with the new patterns." I knew exactly where the observatory was, an old astronomical research facility that had been converted into a planetarium and museum about 15 years ago, sitting on top of Highland Hill on the east side of the city. It was a good 40-minute walk from where we were standing, maybe 20 minutes by bus if you caught the right one. The nearest bus stop that would take her there was 2 blocks north. I was already running late, but something about her, maybe the way she stood so still and vulnerable under that broken streetlight, made me unable to just give her directions and walk away. "I can take you to the bus stop," I offered. "It's not far, just a couple blocks. I can make sure you get on the right bus." She smiled then, and it was a smile that didn't quite reach the right parts of her face, like she had learned the expression from watching humans, but hadn't quite mastered the subtle muscle movements that make a smile look genuine. "That would be very kind," she said. "My name is Astria. I am a researcher. I study light and its properties. My name's David," I told her, and I gently took her elbow to guide her, the way I had seen people do with blind individuals. "What kind of research do you do with light?" As we walked together toward the bus stop, she began to explain her work, but the words she used were strange, technical terms I had never heard before, concepts about light having memory and intention, about photons carrying information across dimensions that human instruments couldn't measure. She spoke about seeing without eyes, about perceiving reality through the vibrations that light creates when it touches matter, about how blindness in one spectrum can mean heightened vision in another. I nodded along, not really understanding half of what she was saying, but fascinated by the passion in her voice, the way she seemed to light up when talking about these impossible concepts. We reached the bus stop, and I checked the schedule on my phone, telling her that the number 47 bus would arrive in about 8 minutes and would take her directly to the observatory stop. She thanked me with that same not quite right smile. And then she did something that changed everything. She reached up with her left hand, the one that wasn't holding the cane, and touched my face with her fingertips. The touch was cold, much colder than it should have been given the relatively mild evening temperature. And her fingers traced the outline of my features with a gentleness that felt both intimate and clinical, like a doctor examining a patient or a sculptor studying a piece of clay. "You have kind eyes," she said, though her own remained hidden behind those opaque dark glasses. "I can feel the light that lives in them. You are someone who helps without expecting return. This is rare in your species." "My species?" I said with a nervous laugh, trying to make light of the weird phrasing. "You make it sound like you're not human." She pulled her hand away and tilted her head again in that too precise way. "The bus is coming," she said, completely ignoring my comment. "I can hear its approach. Thank you for your kindness, David. I will remember you." Comment CTA 1/3 of video. Stop for a second. I need to ask you something really direct. How many times have you helped someone and felt like something was off about them? Something you couldn't quite name? How many times have you had that cold feeling creep down your spine when a stranger touched you or looked at you in a way that felt like they were seeing through you? I know exactly what that feels like. I've carried that sensation alone. But you don't need to feel isolated anymore. Comment down below and write, "I helped someone who didn't feel human." You don't need to share details if you don't want to, but leave that phrase there. Other people will read it and realize they're not alone. Your comment could be the connection someone needs to finally feel understood. The bus arrived right on schedule, its brakes hissing as it pulled up to the curb, and I helped Astria onto the first step, making sure the driver knew she needed to get off at the observatory stop. She thanked me one more time, her hand briefly touching mine again with that same unnatural coldness. And then the doors closed and the bus pulled away, leaving me standing alone at the stop under the streetlights that had started to flicker on all down the block. I stood there for a moment, watching the bus disappear around the corner, and I had this overwhelming feeling that I had just made a terrible mistake, though I couldn't explain why. The feeling passed after a few seconds and I shook it off, telling myself I was just tired from a long day at work, and I continued on to the subway station to catch my train home. That night, I had the first dream. I was standing in a room with no walls, just endless space that seemed to stretch in all directions, and everything was bathed in a light that had colors I had never seen before, hues that don't exist in the normal spectrum, shades that my waking brain couldn't process or remember properly. Astria was there, but she wasn't wearing her dark glasses anymore, and her eyes were completely black, not like a human that has black pupils surrounded by colored irises, but black all the way across, like two perfect circles of obsidian set into her face. She was walking toward me across this impossible space, and as she got closer, I could see that she wasn't walking on anything. She was just moving forward through the void, and her mouth was moving, but no sound was coming out. When she finally reached me, she touched my face again just like she had done at the bus stop. But this time when her fingers made contact with my skin, I could suddenly hear her voice, not through my ears, but directly in my head, speaking words in a language I didn't know, but somehow understood perfectly. "You open yourself to me," she said inside my mind. "You show me kindness when you could have walked past. Now I can see you clearly. Now I know where you are." I woke up gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat despite the cool temperature in my bedroom, and I checked the clock to see it was exactly 3:33 in the morning. I tried to go back to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I could see her standing in that impossible space, those black eyes staring at me with an intensity that felt like it was burning holes through my skull. I finally gave up around 5 and got up to make coffee, telling myself it was just a weird dream brought on by the strange encounter and maybe the spicy food I had eaten for dinner. The next day at work, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I looked up from the computer motherboard I was repairing, I expected to see someone standing in the doorway of the repair shop, but there was never anyone there. The feeling intensified as the day went on, that prickling sensation on the back of your neck that tells you someone's eyes are on you, that primitive instinct that kept our ancestors alive when predators were stalking them through the tall grass. By the time my shift ended, I was jumpy and irritable, and I took a different route home just to shake the feeling, walking down streets I normally never used, taking random turns trying to convince myself I was being paranoid. I was cutting through Riverside Park, taking the path that runs along the old canal, when I saw her again. She was sitting on one of the benches near the water. The same gray coat, the same white cane resting against her leg, and she was facing in my direction despite her supposed blindness, as if she had been waiting specifically for me to walk past. My first instinct was to turn around and go back the way I came, but my feet kept moving forward almost against my will, like they were being pulled by invisible strings. When I was maybe 10 feet away, she spoke, without turning her head. "Hello again, David," she said. "I hoped I would find you here. You were thinking very loudly. It made it easy to locate you. How did you know I would be here?" I asked, my voice sounding shakier than I wanted it to. "I never come through this park. This isn't on my regular route home." She stood up from the bench with a fluid grace that seemed wrong for someone who was supposed to be blind and unfamiliar with her surroundings. "Routes and habits are patterns of light," she said. "Every person leaves a trail of light behind them as they move through the world, a residue of their presence that lingers for those who know how to see it. I followed your light trail. It was very bright, very easy to track. You have a strong presence in this reality." "Look," I said, taking a step back, "I don't know what you're talking about with light trails and tracking people. But this is getting weird. I helped you get to a bus stop. That's it. I don't know you, and I don't understand what you want from me." She tilted her head in that mechanical way again, and for the first time since I met her, she reached up and removed her dark glasses. I had expected to see those black obsidian eyes from my dream, but what I saw was so much worse. Her eyes weren't black. They weren't any color at all. They were empty, not like empty eye sockets, but like looking into a space where something should exist, but doesn't, like staring into a hole in reality itself. When I looked into those non-eyes, I felt myself falling forward even though my feet never moved, felt my consciousness being pulled toward those impossible voids. And for a fraction of a second, I saw what she saw, felt what she felt, experienced reality the way she experienced it. The world exploded into dimensions I didn't have words for. I could see the light trail she had mentioned, threads of luminous color that connected every person to every place they had ever been, a vast web of light that linked all living things in a network of causality and connection. I could see the city not as buildings and streets, but as a living organism made of light and shadow, breathing and pulsing with energies that human eyes weren't designed to perceive. I could see other beings moving through the crowds, entities that wore human shapes but were made of something else entirely, creatures from somewhere else walking among us unnoticed because we lacked the ability to see them for what they really were. And I could see myself through her perception, see my own light trail stretching back through the park and across the city, see the brightness that she had mentioned, the intensity of my presence in this reality that I had never known existed. Then she put her glasses back on, and I was back in my own head, my own limited human perception, gasping for breath and stumbling backward until I hit a tree trunk behind me. "What the hell was that?" I managed to say when I could breathe again. "What are you?" "I am what you would call an observer," she said calmly, as if she hadn't just shown me a reality that shattered everything I thought I knew about the world. "My people study realities like yours, documenting the patterns of light and consciousness that emerge in dimensional spaces that support organic life. I was conducting research in your city when I suffered an accident that damaged my ability to perceive the light spectrum your people call visible. I was trapped, unable to navigate properly, unable to complete my work. Then you helped me. You showed me kindness when I was vulnerable, according to the laws of my people. This creates a debt that must be honored. Extra subscribe CTA in your end. If this story is messing with your head right now, then you need to be here for the next ones too. Don't forget to hit that like button right now and subscribe to the channel, because every new video brings a new piece of this puzzle about beings that walk among us. You won't want to miss what's coming next. "I don't want anything from you," I said, still pressed against the tree trunk, my heart hammering in my chest. "I just helped you find a bus stop. That's all. There's no debt. Just leave me alone." She took a step toward me, and I flinched, but she stopped, sensing my fear. "The debt exists whether you acknowledge it or not," she said. "I have repaired the damage to my perception array. I can see again in all spectra, all dimensions. This is because of your kindness. By the laws of my world, I must offer you compensation. I must offer you a choice." "What choice?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know the answer. She was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice had changed, become softer, almost sad. I can return to my world, and you can return to yours, she said. I will erase the connection I have formed with you, remove your awareness of what you have seen, and you will go back to perceiving reality the way you did before you met me. You will remember helping a blind woman find a bus stop, nothing more. The dreams will stop. The feeling of being watched will fade. You will be safe in your limited perception. Or, she continued, and now her voice carried an edge of something that might have been excitement or might have been hunger. I cannot tell which. You can come with me. I can take you to my world, show you how we perceive reality, teach you to see the way I see. You have the brightness for it, the intensity of presence that is rare among your species. You could become an observer like me. You could leave this limited existence behind and experience dimensions your people have never imagined. I stood there in the darkening park, the sun having set completely while we talked, the streetlights along the canal path flickering to life one by one, and I tried to process what she was offering me. On one hand, return to normal life, forget this ever happened, go back to repairing electronics and taking the same route home every day and never knowing that there were entire dimensions of reality I was missing. On the other hand, leave everything behind, leave my world, my life, my species, and go with this creature who wore a human shape to a place I couldn't imagine, to become something I couldn't understand. The logical choice was obvious. Let her erase the connection. Go back to normal. Forget this nightmare. But even as I thought it, I knew I couldn't do it. Now that I had seen what she had shown me, even for that brief moment, how could I go back to not knowing? How could I walk through the city every day knowing there were light trails connecting everything? Knowing there were beings moving among us that I couldn't see? Knowing there were dimensions of reality stacked on top of each other like layers in a cake, and I was confined to just one thin slice. The knowledge would eat me alive even if she erased my conscious memory of it. Some part of me would always know, would always feel that something was missing. I don't want to forget, I heard myself say, and the words felt like they were coming from someone else, from some deeper part of me that had been asleep until now. Show me. Take me with you. Show me how to see. She smiled then, and this time the smile reached all the right parts of her face. A genuine expression that lit up her features with something that might have been joy or might have been satisfaction. You have chosen well, she said. Come, take my hand. We will go now, before you change your mind, before you remember all the reasons this is impossible. I pushed myself away from the tree and walked toward her, my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else, my mind screaming at me to run in the opposite direction even as my hand reached out to take hers. When our fingers touched, I felt that cold again, that unnatural chill that should have worn me off. But this time the coldness spread up my arm and through my chest and into my head, and I felt something shifting inside me, some fundamental change happening at a level deeper than flesh and bone. The park around us began to shimmer and distort, the trees and paths and streetlights becoming transparent. And through them I could see other places, other versions of the park that existed in dimensions parallel to this one. Spaces where the same physical location held completely different realities. She led me forward and we walked through the membrane between worlds like stepping through a curtain made of light. And I felt my body changing as we crossed, felt my human form becoming something else, something that could exist in the place we were going. The last thing I saw of my world was the empty park bench where she had been sitting, and the white cane she had left behind leaning against it, no longer needed now that she could see again. Then we were somewhere else, somewhere that my human mind couldn't fully process even as I stood in the middle of it. A space filled with impossible geometry and colors that didn't exist and beings that moved through dimensions the way humans move through rooms. This is my world, Astrea said beside me. And when I looked at her, I saw that she was different here, taller and more angular, her form shifting and flowing like she was made of liquid light. And when I looked down at myself, I saw that I was changing too, my human shape becoming something more fluid, more adaptable, more suited to this place where the rules of reality were completely different. Welcome home, David, she said, and her voice echoed through dimensions I was only beginning to perceive. You belong here now. You always did. That brightness I saw in you, it was not human brightness. It was the light of an observer who had forgotten what they were, who had been living in the wrong world for so long they believed they were native to it. You were one of us all along. You just needed someone to remind you, to wake you up, to bring you back. I tried to speak, to ask her what she meant, to demand an explanation. But my voice came out in frequencies I didn't recognize, in harmonics that rippled through the space around us like waves on water. She took my hand again and led me deeper into her world, away from the membrane between realities, away from the anchor point that connected this place to the park of my city. And with each step, I felt my memories of my human life becoming hazier, more distant, like they belonged to someone else, like they were just a dream I was waking up from. I tried to hold on to them, tried to remember my apartment and my job and the streets I walked every day, but they slipped away like water through my fingers, replaced by new memories, or maybe old memories returning, visions of this place and others like it, of traveling between realities and documenting the emergence of consciousness and light, of being an observer for so long that human time measurements had no meaning. By the time we reached what I somehow knew was her dwelling place, a structure made of crystallized light that existed in multiple dimensions at once, I could barely remember what it felt like to be human, could barely remember the limited perception I had lived with for what now seemed like just a brief moment in a much longer existence. She turned to face me and removed her glasses again. And this time when I looked into her eyes, I saw not voids, but infinite depth, dimensions folded inside dimensions, and I understood that this was how we saw, how observers perceived reality, not through crude, organic lenses that registered narrow bands of electromagnetic radiation, but through direct perception of the fundamental structures that underlay all existence. "You saved me," she said, her voice resonating through me like I was an instrument and she was playing chord. "Now I have saved you. We are even. We are bound. We are home." And standing there in her world that was now my world too, surrounded by impossible geometry and colors that had no names and beings that moved through realities like humans move through rooms, I felt something that was either perfect peace or complete horror. I still cannot tell which. I had helped a blind woman find a bus stop, and 3 days later I discovered I belonged to her world, had always belonged to her world, was never really human at all, but just pretending to be. Just dreaming I was human until someone came to wake me up and bring me home. The question I cannot answer. The question that haunts me even now as I exist in this place outside of time and space is whether she was telling the truth. Was I really an observer who had forgotten what I was? Or was I human and she transformed me, rewrote my memories and my nature, turned me into something I was never meant to be as payment for kindness I showed without understanding the cost? I searched through the memories I have now, trying to find the seam where one reality ends and another begins, trying to remember if there was ever time before I was an observer. But every memory leads to another memory of traveling between worlds, documenting realities, existing in dimensions that human minds cannot process. Sometimes when I travel back to observe your reality, I see humans helping each other, small acts of kindness between strangers, and I wonder if any of them know the doors they might be opening, the debts they might be creating, the world they might be inviting in. I wonder if somewhere out there another observer is standing blind and vulnerable on a street corner, waiting for someone kind to help them, waiting to wake that person up and bring them home, or waiting to transform them into something they were never meant to be. I wonder if you have already helped someone like me, if you have already started the process that will end with you leaving your world behind and discovering you belong somewhere else entirely. If you have ever helped a stranger and felt that cold touch, if you have ever had dreams of impossible spaces filled with colors that don't exist, if you have ever looked around at your normal life and felt like you were pretending to be human, like you were playing a role in a story that wasn't really yours, then maybe you are already changing, already remembering what you really are, already hearing the call from whatever world you actually belong to. And if that is true, then I am sorry. Or maybe I am not sorry. Maybe I am welcoming you home the way Astria welcomed me home. Maybe we will meet someday in the spaces between realities, two observers documenting the strange phenomenon of consciousness and light. And we will laugh about the time we thought we were human, about the time we believed we belonged to that limited world with its narrow spectrum of visible light and its single dimension of time. Or maybe I was human once. Maybe I had a real life and a real name and a real apartment with real furniture and real problems that were small and manageable and actually meant something. Maybe that life is still there waiting for me if I could just find my way back through the membrane between worlds. If I could just remember the exact location of the anchor point in the park where Astria led me through. Maybe she lied to me. Maybe the brightness she saw was just human kindness and nothing more. Maybe I was exactly what I thought I was, and she transformed me because her people's laws of debt required her to offer me something of value, even though what they consider valuable is becoming something other than what you are. Maybe I am not home. Maybe I am lost. Maybe I have been kidnapped by a being from another dimension and convinced that this is where I belong because the alternative, accepting that I have been stolen from my own reality and transformed into something alien, would break what is left of my mind. I do not know the truth. I may never know the truth. And that uncertainty is its own kind of horror, worse than any monster, worse than any death, because at least with a monster you know what you are facing. At least with death you know it is an ending. But this existence where I cannot tell if I am home or lost, if I am free or imprisoned, if I was rescued or kidnapped, this is a horror that never ends, that stretches across infinite dimensions and infinite time, that follows me everywhere I go because it lives inside me, because I am the horror now. I am the thing that walks between worlds. I am the observer that might find you standing lost on a street corner someday and offer to show you where you really belong. So the next time you help a stranger, the next time you show kindness to someone who seems a little bit off, who touches you with cold fingers or speaks in frequencies that make your teeth ache or looks at you with eyes that are covered, but somehow see right through you, remember this story. Remember that kindness has consequences, that helping someone might create a debt you cannot pay, that opening a door for someone might mean they open a door for you, a door that leads somewhere you can never return from. Remember that there are beings that walk among you wearing human shapes, but carrying realities that are completely alien. And they are always watching, always waiting, always looking for people with that special brightness that means they might belong somewhere else, might be ready to wake up and remember what they really are, or might be ready to be transformed into something new. And if you are reading this and feeling that cold recognition, that sense of familiarity with the impossible things I have described, then maybe you're already being called home. Maybe your observer is already looking for you. Maybe your transformation has already begun and you just have not noticed it yet. Maybe you will help someone tomorrow and discover 3 days later that you belong to their world. Maybe you already have and you just do not remember it yet because your human memories have not finished fading. Maybe I will meet you in the spaces between realities and we will recognize each other. Two former humans or two observers who forgot they were observers, standing together in dimensions that have no names and looking back at the world we left behind or the world we were stolen from. And neither of us will be able to say for certain which one it was. This is what happens when you help someone who should not exist in your reality. This is what happens when kindness opens doors that were meant to stay closed. This is what happens when you discover you belong somewhere else. And the most terrifying part is not knowing whether that discovery is a revelation or a lie, whether you are waking up or falling asleep, whether you're going home or being taken from home. The horror is not the transformation. The horror is the uncertainty. The horror is never knowing for sure. And that horror never ends.